Greetings all, my name is Rosie Modena and my three passions in life are woman, Africa and the arts. We know that history has a way of erasing our voices and agency. And way before the COVID-19 pandemic, we faced an even bigger crisis, and that is of gender-based violence. The reality is that since lockdown, many victims and survivors have been forced into confinement for 24/7 with their tormentors. So as we move into Women's Month, we need to look at these challenges, unpack them, and try and find solutions to them and the existing problems. The Embassy of Ireland in Pretoria will host a webinar on South African women's lived experiences and agency during the COVID-19 pandemic. I will host the session with the idea of highlighting the lived experiences with the intention to reiterate the role that women have played and still continue to play in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Gender-based violence is not just about domestic violence. You also need to understand that when you strip a woman of her dignity or right to sanitation or basic human right, that is a violence in itself. We need to unpack the different challenges that women in urban areas face compared to women in rural areas. Something that is often not spoken about is a secondary or third level of violence that families in poverty have to face. And another important factor is the narrative that is used when talking about gender-based violence. The narrative that is pushed through media, spoken on platforms, pushed through our government and politicians, all the way down to society, the narrative that can often have damaging effects on the crisis at hand, which often leads to victim blaming, protecting the perpetrator, and so forth. So join us for this webinar. It will be hosted on the Zoom conferencing platform, but it will also be streamed live on Facebook via the Embassy of Ireland Facebook page. The date is the 4th of August. The time will be 1 p.m. South African Standard Time, but the conversation is not going to end there. After the webinar, I will collate the most important key takeaway points and then take the conversation to my Twitter feed on my timeline and highlight these different points with the intention of getting feedback, commentary from my followers and of course other stakeholders who won't be able to be part of the webinar. We know that the issue of gender-based violence, in order to end it, in order to combat it, is a collective effort. So we look forward to your comments, your suggestions and so forth. Remember, it's August the 4th, 1 p.m. South African Standard Time. Our voices are not on lockdown.